So, well, welcome to CheeseSet's first online forum, adjusting to a new artisan cheese world. The CheeseSet is comprised of business consultant Eric Wood, cheesemaking and dairy consultant Paul Thomas, branding design and technology consultant Andrew Till, and cheesemaker and food and drink presenter Francis Gimlet. That's me. So the idea for the CheeseSet came about in the summer of 2019, a discussion between us about whether there was any space in the industry for an artisan cheese business consultancy sparked an idea to survey the market. The set had been fluctuating gently when COVID-19 struck, and we decided to up the rennet. Or for those unfamiliar with cheesemaking parlance, we decided to pull our finger out and get on with it. So the result is this online forum, something that we hope will become a regular feature in the CheeseSet calendar if there's a demand for it. The topics that Paul will outline shortly are bigger than one 45-minute seminar could do full justice to, so we'll likely follow up with additional content after the event. So I'm going to hand over to Paul now, who'll introduce you to our panel.
Okay, so first of all, we have Andy Swinscoe from the Courtyard Dairy. With a background in culinary arts and hospitality. Andy's CV started out in various fine dining restaurants before moving on to some of the bigger names in cheese retail and wholesale, including Hervé Mons and Fine Cheese Company. Now, with his wife Kathy, Andy runs the Courtyard Dairy, which is based in Settle, North Yorkshire. Also hailing from the north of England, we have Martin Gott, who set out to make cheese at Holker Farm Dairy in Cumbria after working with the likes of Graham Kirkham and Mary Holbrook. His creation, St James, is a wash-dried cheese made from raw milk from his own herd of sheep that he keeps with his partner Nicola, and as I understand, some goats have made a recent addition to their herd. Next up, we have Mary Quick. Now, Mary's family have been running their business at home farm farming at home farm for 14 generations now, and she's been at the helm since 1987. Mary's contribution to farming and cheesemaking under an MBE in 2005, and her passion for artisan cheese has made her one of the driving forces behind the creation of the Academy of Cheese, as well as being on the board of the Food Standards Agency and the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board. And then finally, we have Patrick McGuigan joining us from Brighton. Patrick's a freelance food journalist and cheese writer, and will be recognisable to many as a judge on the World Cheese Awards. Patrick has written extensively on the subject of cheese in national newspapers and magazines, as well as appearing on BBC Radio 4's The Food Programme. He co-founded the London Cheese Project and also the British Cheese Weekender, which was a highly successful event quite recently. So, panelists, I'm going to pose a series of questions to you. The first question is going to be on robustness and sustainability. I would ask that you will go through in turn, Andy, Martin, Mary, and Patrick. If you could try and keep as close as possible to 2 minutes in your answers. Some of you may not have something to say. If that's the case, then we can give your time to one of the other panelists, but try and keep to about 2 minutes. And the first question is, how has COVID-19 changed the business of artisan cheese? And what changes are businesses making to contribute to their future robustness and sustainability? And that goes to Andy, first of all, please.
Well, I mean, it's, fundamentally, I think it's made us realise what's important about our business as well as changing our business. I mean, it makes you realise that you do need to have a diverse business. We were very lucky that we did have a diverse business in some regards, that we had a mail order facet, as well as a restaurant wholesale, as well as a retail, as well as a cafe. Because, you know, even though that mail order was a very small part of our business, the delivery side became key to us. And adapting very fast and offering deliveries locally as well was really key to us at the beginning, you know, just changing on a pinhead, which is easier to do in a small business in some regards, and we could try and do that. But I think that if we hadn't have had the mail order business, we wouldn't be here now. It's that simple, really, because where we are as an out of town location, we rely on people travelling really and moving about. We have a lot of regulars, but they must move, and that really hit us very early on. So I think the industry is I do think it's struggling in many regards, but I think there is always light, you know, and there's always things you can change, and we've had to adapt very quickly. We had to change our business very quickly, And if we hadn't have had the mail order business, I think it just shows why having a diverse portfolio can really help at difficult times like this. And it really has helped us being able to offer those deliveries very fast and change to doing that rather than relying on retail. Yeah, so I do think one of the positives as well is that you do start to look at your business from an outside point of view and look in and go, well, that bit was really good. And also when we look at it now, we don't do so much retail, but we realise that even though we're doing more mail order and more deliveries, that is our key. That is what makes us more special. And even though we always thought that, it really focused, what Corona has made us do is focus actually, that is the special part of our business. So even though it's not working so well at the moment, it makes us focus down on that to go forward as well. So it's not just about what's working now, but actually realising what could work in the future.
That's brilliant, Andy. Thank you. And same question to Martin, who I believe has timed his cheese on toast perfectly for the next question.
Sorry about that, on mute. Yeah, to reiterate what Andy says, we're diversified. We have another business on the farm, which is breeding working gun dogs. So Labradors, Cocker Spaniels, Springer Spaniels, and I have to admit that has definitely helped where the lack of cheese income has been an issue. But actually, in terms of the cheese making business, we made a decision a few years ago to run a more extensive system, so keep more animals, make more from grass and manage them sort of on a lower input grass-based system. And actually this year was sort of a continuation of that development, which meant that we've got more acres and more sheep outdoors, if you like, and they're out to grass more and we're managing the pasture differently. And what that means is that from the farm's input point of view is we relatively low input, so not big, expensive feed bills and costs associated with milking animals, but actually much more of it is coming from the soil and from our farm. So that in itself was a bit of a saving grace. I think if we'd been where we were 3 years ago, which was sort of more intensive management, I think we'd have been having real cash flow issues through the summer this year. So what we found is we did have to adapt. We made a different style of cheese, which again we've been working on the last few years, and we've just had to kind of start that development process and turn it into a full-blown product, sort of fast track that development process. But that's gone fairly well. So we've been making hard cheese for the last couple of months, which we've just been putting onto the shelf and storing with a view to selling that in the future. So that having that adaptability in the dairy and a mindset that we can make more than one product or make a variety of different products to suit the marketplace has allowed us to kind of keep in production, keep making cheese with relatively low input costs, which means that we're still here and we're still in business. Whereas I think, had we not had those sort of skills under our belt, we'd have been really struggling now. So yeah, we've got a little stall at Altrincham, which is again a bit diversified again in that we buy and sell farmhouse cheese on a stall in Cheshire, so about an hour and a half south of us here. And actually having that as a secondary sort of outlet for our cheese, but also as a secondary source of income, has been quite helpful as well, because we've benefited where urban areas and little cheese shopping in a place like Altrincham has been quite busy, as customers still come and shop local. And we've definitely had that sort of upsurge in demand as people look to skip out the supermarkets and buy from independents instead. So having that as another string to our bow inadvertently was kind of helpful, really. We hadn't anticipated it being overly helpful, but it has been. So yeah, just a mix of things, I think, has been having a mix of things in the past has always made life a bit more difficult because you've got lots of things going on. But I think in this instance, it's really helped us out. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And next up, Mary, please.
Yeah, well, it's interesting hearing what Andy, what you guys have been and Martin have been saying, because in a way we're a combination, we're some of all of those things. We were quite heavily into food service. Obviously, that stopped. We're selling quite a lot to export. Quite a lot of that slowed down. We were selling into quite a lot of people closed their deli counters because that whole taste and talk thing is some customers felt they just simply didn't want to do. But the things that are working are really interesting. I mean, suddenly people were buying lots and lots and lots of pre-packs, and I've always thought of pre-packed cheese cut into little bits and put in plastic as slightly the poor relation rather than buying it direct from a cut. But actually, I think that's how cheese is going to be going forward. And so the challenge there is how do we make cheese in a cut better? You know, how do we make the rind be a feature and not a blemish, as it can be in a small piece of cheese. Online, as Andy says, you know, our online was about 1% of our business, you know, a few £100 a week, and that went to a few, times 15, and that was just extraordinary. We have stopped making cheese. We have a year's worth of cheese in store, and we still have not quite a year's amount of cheese in store. We have stopped making, just started making today actually. We stopped for 9 weeks because we had lots and lots of cheese and we were worried about running out of cash. We have our own cows, and fortunately we were able to sell our milk to we're the member of a farming cooperative, farmers cooperative, and they make, you know, an entirely sensible commodity cheese which was still being sold very well. I mean, I think what lots of in supermarkets or in, you know, big shops, people went from, they were just buying the commodity products. But what's been amazing is the length, as Martin says, the length to which people have gone to try and find, you know, local, small batch, farm-made cheese, you know, the things that give them those simple pleasures in life. And absolutely, that's where we've got to be. And interestingly enough, now exports are starting to open up. We're talking, we've sold quite large amounts of cheese to Singapore and Australia and America, which is great to know that, those countries are, well, I don't know about America, but those Singapore and Australia, I think, feel that they're, to some extent, have got this under control.
And thank you, Mary. Thank you. And finally, to Patrick.
Yeah, I've been speaking to lots of cheesemakers and retailers over the past 3 months and getting all their different stories. And it has been amazing how quickly the industry, I hate the word pivoted, but that's what everybody seems to be using. And remarkable stories of, you know, cheesemakers and farmers overnight setting up very professional websites with online selling capabilities, literally within a couple of days. I was going to sort of talk about how important it is to show, this crisis has shown how important it is to be diversified in your business. But actually, quite a lot of the businesses that have been really badly hit were diversified. I mean, Mary's a good example. I mean, you were doing exports, you did food service, you do retail, you did online, and it was luck of the draw which bits of your business, you know, if you were doing lots to independent retailers and perhaps farmers markets, you were a little bit more protected. But I think it was just the luck of the draw who got hit, really. And diversification's good, but it also means you can be quite busy doing lots of different things when you'd be better off focusing on one thing and making lots of money out of it. So, you know, it's quite hard to say which sector's the best one to go into. I do think in this crisis, what it's shown is that actually being in control as a producer, whether that is actually having your own shop, like Martin, having your own stall where you can sell, it's your own sales channel that you're in control of, or having a strong online business, has really helped people. And also those businesses that still had a good local network. So it's been the cheesemakers that still had strong links with their local farm shop, their local deli, their local farmers markets, that seem to have come out of this less worse than others. And so I think there's something about that in terms of knowing who's buying your cheese and being a bit more in touch with your distribution network. Because the quote, I could repeat the same quote again and again from cheesemakers that I've interviewed, which is, I had no idea so much of my cheese went to restaurants. In fact, I spoke to a cheesemaker in Scotland who said that to me today, and that's about the 5th time I've heard it. So this thing of, it's easy to give all your cheese over to a wholesaler and then you've no idea where it goes. You're not quite sure what your sales mix is at that point. And so there's something about, at least a chunk of your business, you kind of know who's buying it, and where your cheese is going. I think that those sort of local food networks have been shown to be quite important through all this.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, I just quickly interject. Sorry, I'm allowed to interject, Thomas. It depends. So I suppose like Doddington Dairy are doing a fabulous job up in Northumberland. Throughout the year, they sell. I love Doddington because they sell the vast majority of their stuff within Northumberland. Vast majority, and that's why I love them, is because they save the best for Northumberland. It all stays locally, all goes up Northumberland, and they do really great at that. But this time they've really struggled because nobody's visiting Northumberland. You know, it's a rural area, so they're really key. They're more. I think they're, as a cheesemaker goes, they're more keyed into the local shops than any other cheesemaker I know. In fact, in terms of you go up to Northumberland, you're tripping over Doddington cheese. You go anywhere else, you very rarely see it. You know, and all the different range of cheeses. So it does depend on where you are as well. So, you know, like people who are in touristy areas like Martin, and myself and Doddington, I like to think we're well keyed into our local area. We are, but my local, you know, the radius of my population is tiny. So Martin's lucky in that he's got the Manchester shop. But you have to, these numbers, people numbers as well is a big key factor in that. You know,
it'll differ down to different regions and areas. But what we're going to do is ask everybody, attendees, to put their hands up through the session, and Eric will be looking at the questions and we'll be opening those up for afterwards. So please, if you have a question on anything that's been said, put your hands up. We'll and use the Q&A, the question and answer. There's a little button at the bottom of your screen. Use the Q&A, pose the question, and Eric will go through and will invite people to comment on what's been said. But before we move on to our next question, we'll just do a little poll just to try and find out some percentages on how different. This is to the cheesemakers in the audience. The cheesemakers have been affected by COVID. So I'm going to launch the poll now, and this is the first one. I'll read through, but you should be seeing now on your screen the first question. Which of the following would be of interest? Oh, so that's the wrong poll. I'll go back to the last one. Sorry, we were playing with this just now. So I'm going to relaunch the polling with the correct one. Right. So this is the business impact on the artisan cheesemaker. By comparison with what we had forecast, this is speaking for yourself, our actual cheese revenues for April and May combined are, now these are anonymous, these the answers to these, so we're just getting percentages. So A, higher than expected, B, the same as expected, C, 0 to 24.9% lower than expected, D, 25 to 49.9% lower than expected, or E, more than 50% lower than expected. So there are three questions there. So go through. They are single answer ones. So choose the answer that's relevant to you, and then cast your vote. You've got about a minute or so to do that.
And just in case anyone's shy about saying that their business has been hit by a truck, we would answer more than 50% drop in sales.
Again, these are anonymous. All of the results are anonymous. So.
I'm big and bold, and I say it.
Go on, Mary. Yeah, well,
because actually, it's great to see all the opportunities that there are, and to see, the scope for new change. But it's also being clear that, we don't want to paint a sort of paradise picture where we all say this is absolutely wonderful.
It's hard. I mean, our business, which is the cheese making side of what we do is tiny. But we, my wife and I, we have an events business, and 3 months ago we all of the rest of the events for the rest of the year cancelled, and we spent 3 weeks thinking that's it. We've got a house with now three adults in it. One was locked down. She was over here visiting from Malaysia, and three teenagers and no income. And that was our business gone. But we are now busier with online events in both number of events and turnover than we've ever been in 23 years of
wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, but it's opportunity in its being in the right time and having the right thing. It's it's not going to be as easy for everybody. There are other people, there are colleagues and friends in the events industry who are really suffering. I mean, people that hire out marquees, you name it. So how are we doing on the? We've got. The
numbers seem to be stable now, so I think we may.
So we'll end the polling there, and we will share the results. And so you should be able to see the results there. Well, 50% more, or more than 50% lower than expected. That's 33%. That's quite significantly the highest proportion.
That makes me feel so much better.
Good. Well, I think people were encouraged. Like, little honesty with themselves. And so the most significant impact on the cheese business, the highest proportion by far, was the closure of one or more of the customer segments, 56%, 22% overall decline in volumes ordered through existing market channels, 11% change in order requirements by one or more customers, and 11% other. And then finally, to what extent has the business had to introduce changes to production process, packaging, or products offered as a result of C19? The highest there, again by a margin. My business has already made changes to production process, packaging, or products offered. And so there's, only 11% has not considered anything at all. I think that pretty much means that we've all been affected in some way or another. We're going to share these results after. We'll include them in an email afterwards. So we're going to stop sharing and we'll move on to the next topic. Paul, are you happy to?
Okay, so the next topic is market pressures. How can production to adapt to market pressures? And if that could go to Andy, first of all. Once again, we'll go through an order: Andy, Martin, Mary, and Patrick.
Sorry, my internet cut out then. Would you just say the question again, Paul? Sorry.
Okay. How can businesses adjust production?
Shall I pick up on that one? So it's. Eric, I'll unmute you, Eric. I don't know if you're wishing to say something.
I was just going to say that I think we're all hearing Paul break up, so we'd be better to live.
Lost connection there. Maybe if we.
No, I'll take that. So the question was, how can businesses adjust to production to adapt to market pressures? And so I suppose this time we'll go reverse order, shall we? Or so over to Patrick, and then what's your take on that?
So I missed the question. Say it again.
The question is,
how can market pressures?
Yeah, how can businesses adjust production to adapt to market pressures?
Well, I mean, at the moment, everyone just seems to be frantically cutting up pieces of cheese and wrapping them and sending them out online. Seems to be. So there's been this change. You know, a lot of cheesemakers have moved over to selling directly to the public online, and that's kind of, over this crisis period, has helped them survive, some of them, and clear their maturing rooms. But from what I can understand, it's really hard to make a proper profit out of that, because there's so much labour involved in chopping up. You know, previously you'd put a 25-kilo truckle of cheese on a pallet and off it would go. Then you have to cut it down into however many 200-gram wedges. So I think if online selling for cheesemakers is going to be a new important market, I think for it to be profitable, there needs to be quite a lot of thought goes into it and changes to how people do it. And so I think that's about cutting and wrapping and packing lines. And distribution in the artisan food sector has always been, I've been reporting on specialty food for the best part of 20 years, and getting your product to places is always been a really big stumbling block. And so if you're having to send out a kilo half a kilo at a time, then we need systems. You know, the industry needs ways to make that work, and whether that's collaborating together, having sort of central hubs where you can do that, I'm not sure. I think that's going to be tricky, really.
Interesting. So, I'll carry on. Paul's back with us. I'll let him take over.
If you can hear me, so sorry, I lost you for a second. We've done Patrick. Martin next, maybe?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so we took a different approach and didn't sort of seek to sell cheese online, which probably makes us the only cheese business that doesn't currently sell cheese online. That's because geographically we're very isolated, and in our area we haven't got a wide customer base. We're a tourism centre. Most of the homes in our area are second homes. So actually, with tourism shutting down, there was no locals to sell to. And actually, if we ship everything, even getting deliveries to collected to then send courier was difficult. We're away from the main distribution hub, so by the time it got there, it'd get delayed. The little bits of cheese we did send out to places ended up with 2 or 3 day delays when they got stuck into hubs and places. So we kind of made that decision not to do that. And I think where we're slightly different is that we've, over the last few years, really worked hard to understand cheese making, sort of a broad spectrum of different cheese making styles and recipes. And I think that whilst we haven't always used that experience and that knowledge, having a more broad view of cheese making principles and practices allowed us to adapt quickly to make a new style or new styles of cheese. And I think that that's where the industry could maybe learn, is that actually if you've got proficient and technically minded cheesemakers or a team who are able, then actually that adaptation, that resilience, that ability to change up what you do, whilst it's not going to suit every dairy, and the more specialised the dairies become, obviously the more difficult it is to change your process line. But I think to have a sort of something in your pocket, a sort of another process or another practice or another make or style of cheese available to you, I think is a skill that we've not really fostered across the industry. I meet a lot of cheesemakers who know how to make their cheese very well, but when you ask them about other process, other styles and other makes, they're actually kind of a little bit in the dark about other technical processes. And I think that's where, as an industry, we could take more from that in skilling cheesemakers to understand at least very different styles, and having perhaps dairies that aren't 100% focused on the specialized production of one singular product, but have maybe a little bit more of a mix of products and a balance. Certainly at the farm level, I think that's a key thing. Difficult, obviously, for big, efficient dairies designed to make singular products for supermarkets. Of course, they're not going to be able to change their production line, but I do think cheesemakers, if they're equipped with the knowledge to make different styles, have a degree of resilience that other cheesemakers don't. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that.
Good point.
Thank you. And maybe Mary, if you would like to go next, please.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you say, Martin, because we've certainly seen the demand. I mean, our other styles are not very different. Territorial cheese and goat's cheese and flavoured, adding elderflowers to cheese. We've also coming up with a new line. We're collaborating with the German cheesemaker called Alpen Cheddar. And it feels like there is, the other cheeses we already make, the sales have actually kept up. But I think that's a feature of selling in small pieces of cheese, because people are much more, more likely to try, picking something online. They may be able to they'll try something different, maybe to make up a pack of cheese. So it's interesting the way that our other cheeses that we've made, the volumes have held up better than our mature cheddar. I think there are some sort of technical challenges about I think the move to cutting cheese up into small bits is something that's probably here to stay. I mean, as a cheesemaker, we've been resisting that move for many years, because we feel the cheese is better hand sold, the taste and talk thing. And we absolutely want to be supporting our champions as we see them, the cheesemongers and the chefs, who actually I'd like to shout out for, because they've been so, you know, many of those people have been so badly impacted, and they are our champions. You know, I feel those are the people who talk to the general public about our cheese, and things have been really difficult for them. And but yeah, support them. But so I think we've got to find better ways of presenting cheese in small packs, and yeah, I think it's interesting about new styles of cheese, because I'm not convinced that I think there's been a bit of also a kind of retreat to what people know, and I guess this is where also the importance of something like Academy of Cheese, where the purpose of that is to really spread the knowledge, spread the curd, spread the knowledge about different cheese making styles, and to link up cheesemakers with consumers and with all of those people who, you know, the mongers and the chefs, to link all of those communities together, so that everybody knows what the deal is, and we can all have a really sensible conversation about what cheeses people actually want to buy. And I entirely get the point. I'm feeling a bit. I absolutely know how to make cheddar, but I would be. I know that we are not very geared up to make those other things, and I'm feeling inadequate in relation to Martin, because I know he's a superb cheesemaker on a number of different styles. And Paul, maybe we need to have a conversation about how we can make other cheeses.
Thank you, Mary. And so the same question to Andy now, with the
Paul's got disease
Andy?
again.
Yeah, yeah. A couple of interesting points. One, I'll pick up on Mary's point in that you can sell what you know. So I can sell. I've never sold so much Parmesan. Never ever sold so much Parmesan than we've sold in the last 3-4 months. But that's not why my business is here. My business is here to sell cheeses that are slightly different, you know. And we've sold a lot more commodity cheese, and that's fine. But what makes us special is we sell people like Martin's cheese, and we sell like Gillian, who makes Hebden goat. She's only got 8 goats, and you know, people don't know these cheeses. And without coming into our shop, that's a difficulty that we have had in some regards, is getting across the more unknown cheeses, because a lot of them don't enter awards, they don't enter the big schemes, because they've got so little cheese, and they rely on their local cheesemonger to taste their cheese and talk about it, and that works fine. But when you've lost that connection somewhat, that has proved challenging to sell the more unknown cheeses. But we've come up with ways of getting around that, and that's been quite key of our process of trying to get people to try things that are different. So that's been a challenge. And in terms of production capacity, I'd also agree with Martin to some regard that if you make a soft cheese, I think it's beneficial, not necessarily to make a whole range of cheeses, but you know, to make a hard cheese in some regard, or a semi-firm type of cheese, because it just gives you a greater stability. And especially if you go into, I mean, certain businesses like the Baron Bargods of this world, you know, as they turn more of their milk into cheese, when they get to that 100% capacity, it allows them to I was going to use the word flatten the curve, but that's been used too much recently. But in terms of their milking, you know, in their carving, when they've got too much milk, I mean, historically, a cheesemaker at the moment just sells that additional milk, whereas by having additional cheeses, you can make a hard cheese when you've got too much milk, which is what Martin always used to do. And the same with, and also knowledge as well, I think is really key on that production side. So I've been speaking to Graham Kirkham today, because I was moaning him a little bit at the moment, but because I really like my Lancashires really soft and buttery and really fluffy and really light. And they were a bit tight and dry at the moment. And he says, well, I've just tightened it up. I put a bit more starch in and tightened it up a little bit because they're more stable, you know. And then when a cheese maker tells me that, I'm like, oh, that's fine. I can appreciate that. I can live with that, you know. But, you know, it's, I think he's having that knowledge in his brain to go, oh, this is going to be, I'm not sure on sales so much. I'm going to make my batches a touch tighter. Still going to be nice, but they're going to be just a touch more stable for me, is a really key skill to have as a cheesemaker, that even though he's making a very consistent cheese of a similar style, you can just tweak it a little bit to kind of enable you to deal with those peaks and troughs a little bit more. And I think that's something that we've learned from this crisis, and something which some of us already knew, and some people already did a little bit, but something I think people can work with a little bit better on that side.
Thank you, Andy.
And so we're going to continue to, we've had a couple of questions come in. We'll be answering those at the end, but please do any of the topics that we've been covering, anything that's been said that you wish to comment on, then please do use the Q&A section or the Q&A icon at the bottom, and we'll come to those questions at the end. But we'll move straight on, I think, to our last question. So Paul, would you like to introduce the last question? Oh, I jinxed. So, okay, I'll give it a bash.
Yep.
So the last question is reviewing alternative routes to market. So what alternative routes to market?
Okay.
Oh, are you there, Paul?
So,
I think that may be German he's speaking. I'm not too sure.
Final question.
Oh, I'll just jump in there for a second. The question is, what alternative routes to market exist for artisan cheesemakers, and what measures can be made to strengthen cheesemakers' access to markets, sustainability and profitability? And we'll go back with the original order. So we'll start with Andy and move through to Patrick.
And yeah, I mean, so different. Yeah, you know, I'm here. Yeah, different routes to market. I think, yeah, it's some people were talking about that they have gone more down a direct route and selling much more online and mail order. You know, I think that is a good route to market, and I commend those that have adapted their business fast to get that out. The difficulty with restaurants, we've changed our business a little bit in terms of what we've had to do. So we work with a couple of restaurants now that are doing takeaway boxes, and we will actually cut the cheeses down to kind of like they get 3 cheeses, almost like a cheese board set, you know. And we change that up every week and support different 3 cheeses every week. You know, and these are particularly well-known chefs, so they're tiny little bits and they're really annoying to cut, and we have to price that in. But it means that we're getting rid of a little bit more cheese, and it's getting it out through restaurants that are starting to be open and do more takeaways. It's just taking a bit of pressure off them. And we've also just this week we're putting in outdoor vending machines so that we can kind of offer a grab and go focus a little bit more, which I think is really important in terms of A, it reduces contact for those people who don't want contact, and B, one of the difficulties we have at the moment is in the retail environment that we operate in it a lot, is we can only get one customer in our shop, and you know, even if everything, you know, opened up tomorrow, it would mean we couldn't do the figures that we were doing in retail with one customer in the shop at a time. You know, we normally have 3 people serve 3 to 4 customers, so we're only going to be sitting maximum 35-40% of our retail trade if it all opens up. So we're just trying to find different ways of still offering that. For me, you know, with the collections, and we've got a takeaway coffee machine outside so people can grab a coffee while they wait, and we're just trying to change the way that we offer, you know, serve cheese. But for me, one of the things that I have learned from Corona in terms of different routes to market is retail has been incredibly challenging, and we've lost a lot of business, and the business has changed. However, what it's made me focus on is actually that is the part of my business that's unique. As more and more people do mail order, as more cheesemakers do mail order direct, the reason people come in my door is well, I wouldn't say it's to see me, but that must be high up on their list, I guess. But it's really to come into a shop where you talk to somebody, we have a bit of chat, we have a bit of crack with them, we give them a few tasters, we tell them about the cheese. And for me, that is part of my business that is core. And even though I'm looking at these different routes, they're all designed to assist that core part of my business. And I think that's really key, is that not trying to change too much, because that is what makes me unique. Because if somebody really loves, for example, Bow and Bygod, then they'll go and buy it direct from Johnny, that's fine. But if they've never heard of it, or they want to experience tasting a whole range of cheeses, then they'll come into the shop, and that's what we're here for. So for me, it's actually trying to make our shop adapt to the challenges, and we're looking at potentially having a second shop next to it so that we can serve 2 customers at once, so that we can continue actually not looking at necessarily new routes to market, but realizing what we're really strong at and why people love us. and concentrating on that. Because if we were to become a mail order business fully %, then I don't think we would actually do as well as we do now, because that is not why people love us. People love us for the other side of it. And our mail order business that's done very well, the majority of that is people who've been in our shop and still love us and they want to buy off us, you know, and that is really key to me, you know. And I think that's, you know, as other businesses do mail order, we'll keep those customers because they know they're buying from me and Kathy, you know, and that's the reason they're buying from us, you know, because they can buy a lot of our cheeses elsewhere, but actually it's that identity in the shop, and that's one of the key things I'd like to get across on that side.
Thank you, Andy. And we'll move to Martin.
I think again, in a similar vein to Andy, is focusing on the core business. So at our very core, we're farmers. You know, we're farmers who make raw milk cheese on our, you know, isolated farm in Cumbria. I think that if we become a pack house or a mail order business or an internet business, I think then that changes. It goes a long way from what we're known for and what we're respected for. So one of the kind of interesting pivots for us in COVID has been that we've actually increased our livestock. We bought a herd of goats that we're now milking alongside the sheep. And that seems like, I think to a lot of people, be an absolutely bonkers move. But for us, it's just doubling down on what we are. We are a farm business that makes cheese. So again, these tricks of, well, what do you do if the market collapses? You know, well, you make a harder cheese that keeps longer. You know, people come to us because we are a sort of a hardcore, uncompromising farmhouse business. And I think that that's where we're tapped into a really great network of cheesemongers, cheese shops, retailers, a lot online. Some who weren't so big online and now they are big online. Businesses we've never dealt with that are primarily online who've come to us and said, we want, you know, your product now. We're doing more volume. We think we could sell it. So actually, I think by being really sticking to our really sort of core values of being farmers that make cheese, we've attracted those businesses who are really keen to promote and highlight what we do, and they've sort of, yeah, they're seeking us out and they're assisting us. So we're not doing a piece of cheese in a box and send it to, you know, Ludlow or whatever. But actually, I think that we're allowing the room for other people to do that for us. And I think by sticking to our core values of being on the farm, you know, looking after our livestock, focusing on biodiversity, you know, if it rains, we get less milk, we get less cheese. You know, that's kind of our business. We can suffer from disease and weather and all the things that farmers suffer with. So I think that's our focus is to concentrate on our farm, our system, and our quality cheese making. And perhaps we've missed some of the bounce, you know, that's come as some of these cheesemakers have managed to pivot their businesses. But actually, I think that we're doing our own sort of pivot in our own way, and it aligns well with our core values as farmers primarily that make cheese. So yeah, I think, yeah, to say what Andy said is to focus on what makes your business unique, special, and to double down on that for us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. And Mary?
Thanks. Sorry, unmuting. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting what you say, Martin, because as we have been doing all this online, which has been really important, you know, my concern is that you know, it's really important that we don't stop people moving back to the chefs and the cheesemongers, you know, those people who are our champions. So kind of, you know, that's how I'm seeing things, is that almost that online is very much about brand building, so that people get to know us. If people, you know, people haven't had the opportunity to go out recently, and some people, you know, may want to stay inside and be really cautious for many months to come. So it's really important they can get the cheese, but it's also to not be that not be instead of working with the cheesemongers and the chefs. It strikes me that they're an incredibly creative bunch. They've been hit, you know, as badly, if not worse, as the cheesemakers, and it's where just kind of having lots of conversations with those people, you know, what can we do to have stuff work for you in all of this? And it's almost like sort of trusting to their creativity, to their what it is they're going to need. You know, in terms of chefs, they're going to maybe not have so many people in their kitchens, so they're going to need things more to, you know, they're not going to have somebody able to get the cheese to the way they want it. So maybe we should be doing that back here. You know, I think people will be really up for those affordable treats. So how do we get those to them, almost regardless of what we're doing? And it's interesting on our, we're still doing quite a lot of click and collect from our little farm shop. We've got a little outlet, the cheese box, we call it, which is, you know, where you can come and get some cheese, and ours and one or two other people's cheese from the farm, and people are still wanting to buy kind of in a socially distanced way, and it feels like that's going to be there. I just wanted to say something I didn't say about adjusting to market pressures in production. We have been experimenting with managing store temperatures so we can, in different stores, so that we can have cheese mature slightly faster, slightly slower. Obviously, every time you do that, you're you know, changing some of the other factors. But I think that's been a helpful thing that we've been doing, and just want to share that with other cheesemakers there, to play around with that. Obviously, making sure that cheese doesn't go too acidic with higher temperatures, but just to share.
And we have Paul back with us, and I'll allow Paul to hand over to Patrick.
Dare I hand over to Patrick? Patrick, please.
Yeah, it's the problem is we just don't know. There's an assumption that things at some point are going to go back to normal, and that, you know, there will be restaurants selling lots of cheese, and shops will open again, and, you know, people will be back and having conversations over cheese counters. And I think that will come, but I don't think it's coming back for quite some time. You know, I think we're talking maybe this time next year, things might start looking normal, but nobody really knows. And so it's a bit of a gamble, really, isn't it? I mean, you can sort of stick to your core thing, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, or you can start madly trying to find new routes to market, which is really difficult, because otherwise people would have found those routes to the market years ago. You know, it's quite hard to completely reinvent the wheel. I think collaboration is, I've seen quite a lot of cheesemakers, like Andy was saying, working with local restaurants to do cheese boards where, you know, they've been doing takeaway meals. I've seen quite a lot of cheesemakers doing that. That's something that could carry on, I think. You know, if restaurants are not going to open fully, certainly in Brighton where I live, some restaurants are opening fully, some are opening 3 days a week, and will continue doing takeaway. So there's opportunities there around that sort of takeaway market. I think there's a lot of room around events, and this thing of building your brand during this period and doing better on communication and telling your story, you know, that you have got these unique aspects to your business. I think the companies that seem to have done quite well during this period are the ones that have a strong social media presence, you know, do a lot of blogging, do Zoom tasting events, you know, and are sort of reaching out directly to the public. Whether that, you know, that's not going to kind of replace selling lots of cheese to restaurants, but it can help with cash flow and turnover. If you can get 20, 30, 40 people paying 50 quid a head to tune into a Zoom tasting, it sort of starts adding up. But I kind of feel that this period now, I think cheesemakers need to focus more on their marketing and telling that story. I mean, I've been digging away at these stories for years, you know, phoning up cheesemakers, digging out these amazing stories to write about in newspapers. But it's not on the website. They don't talk about it on Twitter. You know, they've been hiding their strengths. I suppose they've been too busy making cheese. But I think during this period where it's not clear where the market's going to go, I think getting that message out is even more important. Whether that's through your website, doing press releases, whatever really, but getting the message out direct to the public so that they can buy from you directly, or from a really good cheesemonger, or from a farmer's market. I think there has been these big seismic shifts in consumer buying during this period. And I'm not sure everyone's going to go flocking back to the supermarkets. I think there is definitely opportunities there for artisan food producers and good retailers. You know, I think the public are on side. They want to help, and they've had a taste of really good food and perhaps have gone to a farmer's market or bought cheese online for the first time and have really enjoyed the experience. So there's definitely opportunities out there, but I think it's got to be seized. You've got to get your message across directly to people.
Well, thank you, Patrick. What I think we'll do now, we've got some questions lined up. I'm going to hand over to Eric, who will invite, or will hand over to me to invite people to unmute to say their questions. Eric, you'll need to unmute yourself. Perfect.
Thank you, Francis. We've got a great mix of comments and questions, and from a variety of cheesemakers and cheesemongers as well. I'm going to ask you to unmute Martin Moyden, who has got some comments about what they've done.
Okay, Martin, would you like to? You should be allowed to talk now.
There we go. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, yeah. So we're very lucky. Just before all this happened, we took on a market stall local to us, and yeah, that sort of obviously put us right in front of our customer, which was great, which is what we wanted to do initially. And we make quite a variety of cheeses, and I know Martin Gott was saying about adjusting and making a variety of cheeses to try and help, obviously ones that are quicker maturing, slower maturing, and all the rest of it. And that was, I think, we found really important to our customer base that has come to us at this little market local to us, because they can get that variety. So we're very lucky enough to be able to use milk local to us from Abbey Farm, and really good quality milk. And we're just sort of getting that point across to people, and people are really keen for it. They're really interested. They want to be buying local and traditionally made, really good quality cheeses. We've had some, from when we first started, our take-ins have doubled since we started there. And it's really sort of bolstered our presence in the market. And it's just been fantastic. And it really, that's what's seen us through this whole situation. If we didn't have that presence in the market, we'd be really struggling right now, because a good sort of 80% of our business was done through local pubs and restaurants.
Martin, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to cut you short because we're nearly out of time. Francis, can I just check that all the participants can see the comments and questions coming through if they click on Q&A? Is that correct?
Oh, well, they should be able to. Is that right?
Okay.
But so what we will do is we will take a screenshot, Andrew, of the questions, and ensure that those are again broadcast on the email afterwards, as well as there'll be a link to the YouTube video of this session.
Okay, thank you, Francis. I just want to note that there is some great comments from cheesemongers saying that they would love to have more contact with cheesemakers. So I hope that the cheesemakers, if they haven't already seen those comments, and if they're interested to follow up, will look in the follow-up email so that they can see those comments. Those have come through from Julie Oxley Hoyle and one other who's just Patricia Mickelson. So we just moved through to the answer section, but I'm going to move on to very quickly to Tracy Colley. Would you like to unmute Tracy, or is she coming on later? Is that
Tracy will be on to say a few words about the canopy of cheese a little bit later.
Okay,
but,
so all right. So then
we can take a couple of questions before going to Tracy.
Well, there was a question from Keith Kendrick. He asked for some advice. Aside from their own products, what are the panelists, all 8 of you, what is your favorite cheeses right now? Because he would like to buy them. So would you each like to mention a favorite cheese, not among your own production?
Well, shall I go first? Because Keith has said all 8 panelists.
Yes,
so
go for
shall I go
that.
first? Yeah.
Yeah.
The Brighton Ewe, which a sheep's cheese from High Weald Dairy, was absolutely stunning, I thought. So that's my favourite cheese at the moment. Difficult to choose just one, but that's my favourite for the moment.
Okay, who next?
I'll jump in there. I've been eating a lot of Scottish cheese recently, and Coralline is just a great cheese. It's another sheep's milk cheese, a hard sort of cloth-bound raw milk sheep's milk cheese from Errington's, which is delicious.
Wonderful, thank you. Mary?
Oh, I can't narrow it down to one. Baron by God is just wonderful. Colston Bassett Animal Rennet, absolutely glorious. And the Beanley Blue sheep's milk cheese, also orgasmic.
Thank you. And Andy, have you got something you'd like to share?
I mean, at the moment, I really like Summerfield from North Yorkshire Moors. I think that's because it's seasonal and it's just come back. I think any seasonal cheese, when it comes back in, you haven't had it for a while, and you think, oh, this is really good at the moment. And it's just so different, I think. And so, it's an Alpine style made by German Bergkäse style, made by Alistair, whose wife is German. He learned how to make it in Germany many years ago, and it's just really nice and sweet and nutty and just about a year old. So it's last June's production, which is fabulous.
Wonderful, thank you. Martin?
A couple for me that have stood out. We've been getting really great Westcombe cheddar lately. Tom Carver that makes that, and they've hit some really good batches. It's a great piece of cheese we have as a staple, but they've just been singing lately. St Jude has been amazing. We've had some lovely St Jude coming through from Julie Cheney. Lanark Blue from Selena has been amazing. I think the last couple of months we've been getting really great batches of Lanark Blue, and then actually. The sad one is the Innis goat's cheeses have been about as good as I've ever known them in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But they are the last of those, and they're not going to be there anymore. So actually, if you can get your hands on some of them before they disappear, then do. But they've been amazing. So. And
will those cheeses be made again somewhere?
Yeah, okay, that wasn't a plug actually, but yeah, it genuinely wasn't a plug. Those cheeses are as good as I've known them. So.
Thank you for those suggestions. I think I'm gonna halt it there. There's a lovely question in from Ned Palmer saying, I imagine most of the cheese bought in the UK and Ireland is industrial. Can we shift more of that market share over to artisan cheese? Which perfectly summarizes what the cheese set is all about and what we are aiming to achieve. So thank you for that, Ned.
Over to Tracy.
Yes.
Lovely. Tracy, I'm going to ask you to use a panelist, so you can come on in all of your finery, and if you could just say a few words about the latest happenings at the Academy of Cheese. Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm unmuting. And I'll start video.
Brilliant.
Hi. Hello.
Oh, and with banner as well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the Cheese Set. Great webinar. Very, very interesting. I will quickly just tell you, so the Academy of Cheese, everybody I'm sure knows all about us, the cheesemakers. We were set up for the cheesemakers to educate people about cheese and to sell cheese for its value rather than at value prices. So that last question that Eric has just mentioned about, that Ned is saying about getting rid of some of the more industrial cheeses, or spreading the shift from purchasing from the industrial, more mass-produced cheeses to the artisan cheeses, is really very part of what we're trying to do by educating people about how cheese is made, how it's matured, giving a more of an appreciation. I mean, Mary bless you, hello darling, is always talking about how this happened in the wine world. And Francis, you've very much been part of the wine world, where back in the 70s we had leaf rail milk. Some of you are probably not even born then. Martin, maybe not even born then. Paul. And now you've got all those hundreds and thousands of different wines in the supermarkets, and that's where we would like it to be for artisan cheese and beautiful cheesemakers. So the Academy massively hit by the crisis as well, realising that we couldn't do any of our courses, our classroom courses. So instantly we changed what we were doing and put our energy and our time and effort into working with all you lovely people. And Patrick and I put together the British Cheese Weekender because we just thought, oh my God, these cheesemakers need to sell this cheese, the soft cheesemakers, the blue cheesemakers, desperately. And British Cheese Weekend turned out to be very innovative for its time. Everybody's gone online and doing virtual now. And we heard that lots and lots of cheesemakers did shift cheese over that weekend, which was brilliant. We're also doing Tuesday night is cheese night, so cheesemakers can come on and talk with Charlie Turnbull, one of our directors and training partners, which is happening soon, so at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. And cheesemakers out there, cheesemongers, come on as guests. We want you, and we want to promote you and get you talking and telling the cheese community that we've created who and what you are, and what an amazing heritage products we've got. Patrick's very right. I think we're all a bit shy about shouting how great we are, and we need to get really, really, really good at this to make sure that people keep buying the cheese, even during the crisis, beyond the crisis, and as we go out of it, or if we ever get out of it. We have now gone from 2,000, 3,000 people engaging with the Academy and taking the Academy of courses. We're up to 5,300 at the moment, which is, yeah, Mary, it is amazing. And we've got people engaging with us online, so they're doing e-learning, so they can still learn online all around the world. It's fantastic. And we've got 3 training partners currently doing virtual classes. So like tonight, like you've done this afternoon, they're doing the level 1. We've just done level 1 at the moment, although we've got requests for level 2. Patrick down there in that right-hand corner is sold out for his first online course, which is fantastic. He's doing 1 a month. We've got Charlie Turnbull running, and the Mechanico, our Japanese training partner, is doing courses in Japanese as well. We need support, so any of you cheesemakers that want to support us, you can have a very cheap advert for 250 quid a year. You can have as many as your cheeses into the cheese library, which the cheese library is a online resource for people to learn about the cheeses and for you to shout about your cheese. Tell the story. This is what we're saying. Tell your story. And you can have your cheeses on there. We can promote you on our online cheese directory. And those 5,300 odd people, which is growing all the time in the cheese community, just want to know more about cheese. They just love cheese. So basically, we're here for you guys. And,
Lovely.
Get in touch.
Thank you very much, Tracy. That's brilliant. So yeah, so the message is both ways. I mean, the Academy is there not just to help you, you can help it. And if you start feeding people that are eating your cheese towards the Academy, then the industry will grow as a whole, I think. Thank you, Tracy. We will now just, there's a little, one more little poll that will just help us as the cheese set to set further. We're going to continue these forums, and they'll be, well, hopefully more polished and as we get to understand what a webinar is. We'll continue developing the content. I think that the slot with a guest at the end, I think is quite a nice one. We'll continue that. but they'll follow a similar structure. But we're just going to put a little poll up, and if you could please be so kind to pop your answers in. Again, they're anonymous, and they'll help us not only develop content for this. It'll be the end of the month. It'll be we're planning the last Tuesday of every month. The next one is the 28th of July. So pop that into your calendar. We will try and remind you, certainly if you check the little box that will allow us to send you an email, you'll get another email in the month. In order for us to set some topics for that webinar, as well as some, I suppose, content for the cheese set, because we've sort of turbocharged bringing the cheese set to market, and we are going to develop content on the basis of, I suppose, what people tell us they want. So hopefully that this poll, I'll share that with you now, will help us to develop the content. Right, that should be us. So which of the following would be of interest to you for the cheese set to cover in future free forums, as well as to develop video webinar content to offer for our consultancy service? And you can answer as many or tick as many of those topics as you wish. Progression planning and governance, strategic alignment of the farm and cheese dairy, alternative revenue streams, building a brand, how can we recruit the technologists of the future, creating a regulatory environment that promotes the artisan cheese sector, press relations for the artisan cheese business, or social media for the artisan cheese business.
Francis, it might be easier. The first option might make more sense if it was succession planning and governance.
Oh, forgive me. Yes, I copied and pasted that from earlier. Succession planning and governance. So that might get more than 9%. So go back and revote if you wish. If you wish to consider who you're going to pass your business on to, and how they're going to manage it for you. Your vast cheese empire that either wholesaler, retailer, or cheesemaker. Right, so I think we're about stable again, we say. So we'll end the polling and we'll share the results just quickly. But what we will do, we won't dwell on this because we're aware we're running over time. We will submit these results, or put these results both on the email out, and we'll see if we can do that on YouTube as well. So I'll just share the results now. So you should see those. So the highest is the response, press relations for the artisan cheese business, which kind of mirrors what Patrick was saying a little earlier. It's about speaking to the public and having them understand. And you can't grow an industry without both ends. If you just try and grow the producers, you're not going to get very far unless the public knows about you. So that's a key one. Social media for the artisan cheese business, similarly high. That's the next one up on 45%. And then regulatory environment that promotes the artisan sector. So totally different end of things, but I'm sure we'll elaborate on that, Paul, and we can look at ways to bring that into a future webinar. Next, building a brand. That's very much, again, in line with I suppose, presenting yourself to your audience. So there's some interesting results there anyway. And I think that just about brings us to a close. I would very much like to well, thank all of our attendees and also our wonderful panelists who've very kindly joined us for this and made it a very rich session. And there is so much there that we have obviously recorded the session, and we will put it onto YouTube once we work out how to do that. So I'm being too honest here, I think. And hopefully we can revisit it. And I know there are a lot of people, when we emailed, they said, oh, I won't be able to make it, so please send us the link. So there'll be many more, hopefully, people getting something out of the session, as I know I have. But I'll hand over to Paul. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, not from me, other than to thank the panelists and also Tracy for speaking tonight.
Indeed. Well, thank you all. In that case, I think that just about brings us to a close. Please look out for the email with the link to this on YouTube. And there'll be poll results, various other things, and a date for your diary, 28th of July, same time, same place, under lockdown, possibly. But even if we're all free and on beaches and camping, we can still sign in. So there we go. We don't have to be locked down to benefit. Thank you all, and well, good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.